Of those who were born women, all who did bad things and were covered were changed into their second birth in men. No, sorry. Of those, all of those who were born men, those who did bad things and those who were cowardly were changed into a second birth in women. Plato. The women's role within the society has been a very controversial topic throughout the history. Many centuries and centuries have happened, and this has been such a controversial topic in which everybody has spoken. Many theories have said a lot of things about it, expressing one and defending one or another opinion. The day of today, I'm going to talk about specifically the role of women within the Catholic Church, saying that the role of women within the Catholic Church lies under discrimination based on arguments that are not valid anymore. So it has to be reinstated. First of all, I will give you some background, some historical background of the women's role so we can understand. I'm going to talk about the Greeks and I'm going to talk about the Jews. Why? Because these two cultures were the base for our thinking, for our Western thinking, and for the Catholic Church ideology. Okay? I think of the Greeks, and I think of the women's role, and of course that I think a very repressed role. I think of something that is not right, and if we think it today, of course that's obsolete. But in those days, it was very common. In the ancient Greece, the women had dignity a little bit superior of that of an slave. Okay, she was so repressed that she was destined to be at home all day. She didn't have voice. She didn't have public voice. She couldn't vote. Okay, and actually, the same-sex relationships that we all know that happened in the ancient Greece, they happened because the women were not dignified enough to establish a relationship with a man. I mean, the men were superior. Then you shouldn't have a relationship with someone that was inferior. If a man had sexual intercourses with a woman and not for beyond reproductive purposes, it was terribly sin, because it was not well seen that a man and a woman could actually have a relationship. This is, and you already heard what Plato thought, okay? And we know that discrimination existed. Now, this is about the Greeks, okay? This is like the general context about the Greeks and how they did everything and how the woman was within the Greek society. Now the Jews. And of course that we have to consider that those are like very old cultures, and maybe if we want to judge them, we have to go back in time to that very specific time to understand. But at that time, women also were nothing. I mean, they had to stay at home, they had to be submissive to their husband, and they were actually impure for menstruating and for getting pregnant. Nowadays, of course, that's ridiculous and that's absurd, because we know that those are physiological processes that happen, and we are not going to say that a woman is impure because she menstruates or because she gets pregnant. I mean, that's crazy. But in those days, that was what was happening, okay? And also, I mean, we all know, or I don't know if we all know, but we all have heard about the Sarah story. She couldn't have babies, so she let Abraham to have sex with her maid so she could have babies. What does this mean? This means that being a mother determined the women's role. If women could not have babies, then they would be no one. I mean, and this is today, of course, or at least I think that today is crazy. I mean, we know that women can stand and can say more things more than being a mother. If they want to be a mother, it's okay, but if they don't want to, it's okay. I mean, we don't have to judge them because of that. But at that time, that was what it was happening, okay? So now that you have this context, within this very ideological stuff where it was the women very repressed, I'm going to talk about a little bit more the women within the Catholic Church. What happens with the women within the Catholic Church? Well, in the Christian literature, in the Catholic literature, we can find many examples of discrimination. Saint Thomas said that men can only be tempted, but that animal part of which women are symbol. Tertullian, a very famous apologist within the Catholic Church, incites women to cover themselves, to dress mourning, and to feel eternally ashamed for having been the ruin of humanity. Of course, referring to that passage of Eve and Adam, which Eve incites Adam to eat the apple and those things. And this is crazy. I mean, how can someone actually think that? You hear that, and your common sense, what tells you your common sense? Is it logical? I mean, that's not logical, but it has many implications today. And it has many implications today. And for example, in the Jews, maybe we can understand that they were an errant town and they had to move very frequently. And maybe they developed those laws because they had to move and they had to be like very strict. But okay, maybe that was valid at that time. But now, 20 centuries after that, is it still valid? When I think of priesthood, and specifically of female priesthood, it comes to my mind many things. It comes to my mind many things. And is it really a sin to let women become priests? Is it a sin? Well, of course that I did some research, and this is not a topic that I thought yesterday. I mean, I have always thought it, and of course that I have done research for a long time. And I asked the people who are within the Catholic Church, like the prepared people, and they said the first thing that say that is that Jesus didn't call women to become their disciples. Okay? Jesus didn't call women, he called men. And of course, that's pretty obvious because he was Jew and he lived, and maybe of course that he didn't discriminate women, but he lived in a very specific society where women wouldn't have been heard. Jew people wouldn't have listened, the Jews wouldn't have listened to women. Okay, so that's why he called men. Because, I mean, people killed him. Imagine now if he had wanted to call women. Now, also there is a very important thing in which Paul, in his first letter to the Corinthians, says that women should keep silent in the congregation. If they have a doubt or if they don't understand something, they can ask their husbands at home. But it's not proper, and he says this way, it's not proper for a woman to speak in the congregation, to speak in public. Okay, those arguments are the ones that have been presented to me when I question the women's role within the society and why a woman cannot become a priest. But I say, those things are not valid anymore. Are not valid because we live in a different time. We live in a different time in which women have public voice, in which women can decide, in which women take a role in politics, in which women are not the submissive ones that they used to be, or maybe they are, but that's not like the most important part. We know that women have equal dignity. We know that women now can say a lot of things and can think by themselves. So which is that, what is the church afraid of? What is really stopping the church from accepting the women and female priesthood? Is it really that we play very different roles, or is it that the clergy is just too proud to accept a women to take the same role as a man with equal dignity? As a conclusion, of course, I think that women shouldn't be discriminated because of being women. That's illogical. Being women is a genetical issue, okay? And if it's genetics, then God created. So it's illogical. So I really incite, I know that this is controversial, but I really incite you to think, if it is really a sin, is it really bad? Or what it really represents? Thank you very much.